Hello, my name is Jaden, and today I will be teaching you guys the military technological advances of the Civil War. In this video, I will give a brief description on the weapons used during the war, how they worked, and also I will then talk about the innovations, how they worked, and how they influenced the outcome of history. I will stop talking periodically in order for you guys to write down notes if you need to. The weapons used during this war are very prehistoric to what we see today. There were no cars, planes, or missiles. The main uses for transportation were trains and horses. Even though the weapons during this time are not nearly as deadly as the weapons that we have today, more casualties were lost during this war than any other war America has fought. The most common weapons used in the war were cannons, rifles, and bayonets used for close combat. Some examples of weapons used during the war were the U.S. Model 1855 rifle, the Sharps carbine, and the Remington revolver. The cannons during the 18th century required a lot of manpower and used gunpowder, which was ignited, to launch the cannon projectile out of the barrel. The cannons weighed several hundred pounds and could fire many different types of shells, including the round shot, which was the most common cannon projectile. It did not explode and was just a regular ball of metal. Next we have chain shots. These weapons are very popular by the Navy. They were used for destroying the masts of enemy vessels. Next up we have explosive shells. Unlike the round shots, they actually had an explosive payload of gunpowder inside of them. They were mainly used against ships. Last I have canister shots. This weapon was mainly used against cavalry and infantry because of its wide kill zone. It had small cannonballs inside of it, which scattered everywhere, killing everything in its path. The first innovation of the war that I'll be discussing today is the United States Telegraph Corps, invented in 1861. Thanks to this system, 4,000 miles of telegraph wire was laid out, and 1,200 operators were hired to send information to and from the battlefield. This became Abraham Lincoln's most valuable innovation of the war. It helped the Union win because of the ability to send information on reconnaissance, supply reports, and many other reasons. The South did not have this advantage because they were unable to have the money and resources to build this large design. As a result, they had a huge disadvantage because they were unable to send information quickly. The next major innovation of the war is aerial reconnaissance. Both sides used hot air balloons to quickly gain a vantage point over the battlefield. Combining this innovation with the telegraph wire, they could easily send signals back to the ground. This helped the probability of winning the war because it could tell commanders and generals of where the enemy is moving so they can restation troops or cannons. This was the first war to ever use railroads for transportation of supplies and troops. The North had a superior 20,000 miles of railroad track compared to the mere 9,000 miles of railroad track of the South. The North even had their own locomotive factory and superior infrastructure. Both sides also made innovations to their ships and navy. Historically, some of the first warships were believed to have been created in 1562 by the Korean Royal Navy. There have been many other claims on the first true ironclad warships, but these claims have been proven false. A few examples are the Finis Belli and the Santa Ana, but ironclad warships were not used for combat until the Civil War in 1862. The Confederacy made several warships, including one of the most famous and successful, the CSS Merrimack. The Merrimack was a 4,500-ton steam-powered warship with 12 guns and a ram at the bow. Originally, the ship was a wooden frigate. but it was later reinforced with iron plating. The ship became extremely effective against other frigates, which were commonly wooden. Merrimac's armor easily bounced the Union's cannonballs away and was able to attack well without sustaining too much damage. During the Battle of Hampton Roads, which occurred in 1862 on March 8th, the CSS Merrimac first successfully engaged the USS Congress and the USS Cumberland. This battle is extremely important in history because it influenced future naval warfare and technology. The next innovation of the Civil War are long-range ballistic weapons. Prior to the war, smoothbore muskets were often used and can range about 300 feet. However, shortly before the war began, the invention of rifling, which is a musket barrel with grooves, meant bullets could spin and travel at 900 feet. Rifling is basically when they take the inside of a barrel and create grooves in a spiral pattern all the way to the end of the weapon. This guides the bullet to spin rapidly, giving it more velocity and momentum. Next up, we have the Gatling gun. It is referred to as the ancestor of the modern machine gun. Richard Gatling invented the gun in hopes that the weapon would be so catastrophic that the men of the opposing sides of the war would stop fighting. Gatling gun was the first easy and reliable machine gun and had 6 to 10 rotating gun barrels, each with their own firing mechanism. The gun was hand-cranked, and each of the bullets were automatically loaded, fired, and ejected from its cartridge. This weapon is very successful because it did not overheat. The problem with previous machine guns is that they overheated, causing the gun barrel to expand. Now you'll look towards the creation and use of submarines. During the war, the Confederacy was desperate to break the Union blockade to allow supply trade. They created multiple submarines to destroy the blockade. The North then tried to copy the South by creating their own submarine. The Alligator was the first submersible to be used by the United States Navy and was created in 1863. The ship was about 30 feet long and was made of iron. It had multiple watertight compartments and was able to carry 18 people. For propulsion, she was equipped with 16 hand-powered paddles. All the submarines from this time period operated like this ship. Many of the submarine attacks failed, but one attack was successful, demonstrating the potential of this new weapon that was just starting to be used for naval combat. The ship responsible for the successful attack was the CSS Hunley, which I'll mention later in the video. When the Confederates created and used naval mines and torpedoes, they were successful in sinking 40 Union ships. The purpose of these naval mines and torpedoes was to break the Union blockade to allow transportation of supplies. The torpedoes in the 18th century were much different than they are in the present. Torpedoes were not self-propelled and functioned more like underwater landmines. During this time period, torpedoes would float freely on the surface of water and would wait for an enemy ship to run into it. They would also be anchored to the sea floor and stayed underwater but right below the surface. Another Civil War torpedo was the Harvey. It was used for towing along the ship and protected the ship from ramming and close combat. The last torpedo was a spar torpedo, and it was used to destroy blockades during the Civil War. A spar torpedo was a 20-foot long pole with a contact bomb attached to the end of it. It was used to ram into the enemy vessel and explode. During the Civil War, the Confederacy used a ship called the CSS Hunley to sink the USS Housatonic by ramming its spar line into the Housatonic, sinking it. However, the blast was stronger than expected and brought the Hunley down along with the Housatonic. This ship played a little part in the Civil War but greatly influenced future naval warfare. Keep in mind that each invention mentioned in this video has greatly influenced the outcome of the war and the military that we see today. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.